You knew. You knew before the second date. You knew before you signed the contract. You knew before you said yes, before you moved in, before you gave them another chance, before you let them back into the room you had finally managed to close. You knew, and you stayed anyway. And here is the part no one talks about. You didn't miss the red flags. You saw them clearly. Sometimes you even named them to yourself, to a friend, into the Notes app on your phone at 2 a.m. You understood exactly what they were, and then you chose not to know. That is not stupidity. That is not weakness. That is not a failure of character. That is something far more human. There is a moment where reality splits into two versions of itself. In the first version, you see what is actually there. The way they talked over you, the pattern of hot and cold, the dismissals disguised as jokes, the promises that dissolved the moment they were no longer useful. You see it. All of it, but almost simultaneously, another version appears. One where this person is the exception. One where the situation is different. One where the red flag becomes a misunderstanding, a wound, a rough edge your patience could smooth over. That second version didn't come from nowhere. You built, Italiano, piece by piece, over a lifetime of learning what love required of you. What we do not make conscious, we experience as fate. The forces shaping your choices are not random. They are the internal architecture of every relationship you ever watched, survived, or longed for. By the time you were a child, your nervous system had already defined what love feels like. And if love was inconsistent, warm one moment, withdrawn the next, your system did not label it unstable. It labeled it familiar. It labeled it home. So when you meet someone who carries that same emotional pattern, something in you doesn't recoil. Something in you relaxes. Not because you are broken, but because your nervous system believes it has found its native language. You learn to love at a cost, and somewhere inside you, that cost began to feel like proof. Ignoring a red flag requires effort. You notice something. A subtle discomfort, a tightening in your body, and then you reinterpret it. They're just stressed. I'm being too sensitive. Maybe I'm the problem. It is far less threatening to doubt yourself than to doubt the relationship. Doubting yourself hurts, but it preserves attachment. It keeps hope alive. Doubting the relationship risks loss, and a nervous system conditioned to fear abandonment will do almost anything to avoid that conclusion. Even manufacture blindness. Over time, this becomes a pattern. A quiet exhaustion, a constant a strange sense of being close to someone and yet privately alone. You haven't been unlucky. You have been consistent. Consistent with an internal map drawn long ago. The red flag you ignored didn't feel like a warning. It felt like an opening, a puzzle, a challenge you believed you were meant to solve. Your wound and their wound fit together, and you called it chemistry. It was chemistry, just not the kind anyone writes love songs about. This is not your fault, but it is your responsibility, not to punish yourself, but to learn the difference between familiarity and safety, between intensity and depth, between someone who feels like home and someone who is one. There is a younger version of you who made reasonable decisions with limited information. That version learned, love requires vigilance. Love requires performance. Love is something you earn. Those strategies were adaptive, but you are not that child anymore, and the strategies that protected you then may confine you now. Ignoring red flags was never about the flags. It was about fear. Fear that if you acknowledged what you saw, you would have to act. And acting might mean loss. And loss might mean facing the terrifying question, am I enough on my own? Becoming who you truly are costs something. It costs illusions. It costs familiar pain. It costs the comfort of not seeing clearly. Red flags are not tests. They are information, and you have always been capable of receiving it. Seeing clearly is not unkind. Trusting yourself is not failure. Leaving what hurts you is not the end of love. It may be the first real act of it. You knew. You always knew. And one day, you will stop needing not to. That is not the end of your story. That is the first honest sentence of it.